awake at night and you can't sleep tonight, blame Jason.
I would not go that far. Okay. First, thank you for coming along. This talk on cybersecurity, what keeps me awake at night. I have to try to stand here. This is the sweet spot between being blinded. So every now and then you might see me go like this, and then you might see me, flinch a bit and then go back. So this is where I'll try to stand for most of the talk. So what I'm going to try to be doing today is going to give you an idea of some of the research I've been doing over the last probably close to about 12 years in cybersecurity, and what was initially called information security and then transferred to e-security, and then somehow over the last maybe 5 or 6 years has jumped to, actually even a bit more, probably about the last 6 or 7 or 8 years has jumped to cybersecurity. I actually kind of do really wonder in about 5 or 6 years whether there's going to be some new term, whether cyber is going to be dropped and we're going to have quantum security. I don't know. Maybe we already have quantum security. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm actually kind of quite curious of what's going to happen, what word is going to go before security next. Anyway, so what keeps me up at night? So the aim really is to give a bit of overview of what I use cybersecurity as, and then also to kind of highlight why I think cybersecurity is increasingly important, to kind of give you some kind of general overviews of some general context of why cybersecurity is so important these days. But really the meat of the talk is really to talk about some of the big challenges. So like I said, even though it's what keeps me up at night, really, as Sheila was saying, I'm here to creep you up as much as possible. That's kind of my aim. So hopefully everyone knows that's what they were signing up for. So I'm here to give you. So I focus on 3 main parts. One is something I call kind of intangibility of online risk, and that kind of deals generally with the point that even though all of us know about online risk, there's this kind of thing where some people still think that the online world is this thing that's out there somewhere, and real life is something completely different. So I talk a little bit about that and how people act differently in these different contexts. Then I focus on social engineering, what that is, and some of the kind of main ways in which social engineers actually launch attacks against basically all of us. And then lastly, I talk about the Internet of Things, because I think the Internet of Things is something we can never get away from, at least for now, for the next few years. And I talk about why that's important and what are some of the key challenges that we face with the IoT. So, cybersecurity 101. So, whenever I tell people, let's see, oh, by the way, I try to make sessions as interactive as possible so you don't fall asleep. It is 7:30. This is, I think the latest I've given a talk before is 8. And quick like this, I see some people in the back row nodding off. So back row people, I know why you sit in the back row, okay? So the aim here will be to make this session as interactive as possible so we kind of all have fun, really. So what people think. So when I tell people that I do cybersecurity, generally speaking, especially my friends, whenever I tell my friends I do cybersecurity, my friends say, oh, amazing, so you're a hacker. And I say, well, no, that's not really what I do. And then, if you kind of jump ahead to my parents, tell my parents, and tell my dad and my mom I do cybersecurity, and they think, oh, that's basically magic. I mean, you're a magician, you kind of do stuff with a computer, and that's okay, that's fine. Other academics perceive me, once again, probably more on the hacker side, in that I'm this person that comes out with attacks that kind of make people's lives difficult. So continuing that trend, society also has this bad view of me whenever I say that I do cybersecurity. Realistically, this is what I strongly believe that I do. This is a genuine picture of me. I'm not laughing, this is serious. This is not fake news or anything, this is serious. This is a genuine picture of me at my desk, and this is what I do on a day-to-day basis. I have loads of screens, it's all very high-tech, it's kind of matrixy. But realistically, day-to-day basis, this is kind of actually what I do. So sorry to disappoint those that really thought this was going to be a very high-tech talk with lots of interesting stuff. It will be, but this, on a day-to-day basis, is what I do. I usually sit at a computer, get in, and I kind of look up some articles, I focus on interesting thoughts, I do a lot of whiteboard sessions, and generally speaking, in terms of what cybersecurity is, I focus quite a bit on how criminals might try to attack individuals and what we can try to do about it. That's generally speaking what I try to do. So generally speaking, if you think about cybersecurity, cybersecurity can be broken down into this kind of formal definitions, kind of one of the kind of many different academic definitions. So the collection of processes, policies, guidelines, tools, and technologies that can be used to protect computers, computer devices and services. Now, some of the key things to point out here, I also should have actually asked, how many people in here are IT familiar? Show of hands. Okay, that's good. Sorry, I have to answer this question. And how many people in here are cybersecurity familiar? So probably like 3/4 actually. Okay, so this is probably, so you guys are probably telling me what cybersecurity is. Okay. Does anyone actually disagree with this definition? Or there's any part that you think is missing, not covered? You had a yeah.
What about the human?
Yes, true. What else? Anything else? I'll focus on the human in a second. No? So what the human does is actually come into some regards to this idea of kind of policies and guidelines, but you're completely right. There's an argument that actually focusing on human here is quite important. Maybe that should be more explicit, as we'll come on to in a second. So generally speaking, here is the overall idea, and one thing I really want to emphasize here that's actually along this point of the human is that when I mention cybersecurity, people always think, or let's say general public, some of the general public always think that it's this thing where I focus on technology only. It's like this tech thing, so security is tech. And cybersecurity, I think, tries to dispel a bit of that because it tries to highlight that it's not actually just only on tech, it's not only on devices, which is why here we have not only technologies and tools, but we also have processes, policies, and guidelines. These are also kind of key tenets of cybersecurity and kind of security in this context. So now we've kind of talked a little bit about what security kind of is. Now let's talk a little bit about the importance of security. And I think it can really be boiled down to this. And that fact is that security, the importance of security is driven by the fact that technology is in almost, probably actually every area of our lives. We can't get away from it anymore. Here, for example, here's one example. And here's technology being used to support democracy. So in many, technology has been used to support democracy, especially when it comes to voting for quite a while. But one of the interesting things these days is when it comes to the internet and the internet's application of the use of the internet in the context of actually online voting systems. So people are always kind of quite divided on this, but let me see who actually thinks, who thinks that online voting is a good idea? And who thinks that it's not a good idea? I just want to see how many people abstain. So it's kind of like, yeah, half and half. So you said what? For or against?
Poor idea.
For?
Poor idea.
Poor idea, why? What do you think?
The risk of impersonation not being the person who's
Yeah. So, okay. And who says for? Yeah. What do you think?
I think it actually works, and actually indicates, I think, the argument the gentleman just said about authentication, because at the moment you don't have to provide any authentication to live in the UK.
That was, yeah, I remember that coming out. What about someone else that's against? Maybe from this side. No one on this side is talking to me. I did say pick on people. I did warn you. There's a trick. I don't expect this to come from all of you because all of you are adults. But I do a talk as well with kids. And I always tell them, I give them a warning that when they ask a question, don't look away, don't look down, don't look up, don't look sideways, because those are the people that you actually pick on. So when I ask a question, trust me, I say this, and I tell them at the beginning, this is what it is about. And still they ask a question, so that's the person I go for. So someone on this side, that's actually against. Why do you think, why are you against? Yeah.
Because if it gets compromised, you won't find out until it's too late.
Right, so the overall impact, and yep, okay. And someone, yep.
Well, my mother was blind, she's dead now, and found a lot of technology difficult to use because of that.
Yep.
Another of my aunt's 90 last month, that kind of thing. So there's a danger of disenfranchising all the people.
True. So, to go back here, one of the interesting things I wanted to point out actually, on this whole idea of internet voting is, of course, it kind of, as it has divided the audience here, it divides many countries in the world. Even though most countries are actually, they would apply technology when it comes to voting, but most countries, even though they have tried and experimented with online voting, only one country actually does it nationally, and that's Estonia. And Estonia is a really, really interesting case because Estonia is a highly digital society, a highly digital nation. I think they're probably the most digital nation in terms of how they actually use technology and apply it to so many different services. So in Estonia, for example, 30% of people vote online. This is one of the last statistics I found. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. If we move on to kind of think about supporting business, so that was kind of supporting democracy and governments and so on. If you think about supporting business, then you have kind of classic things like email. So email is great, of course, for a number of different reasons, but then email actually is kind of one of the main tools used to engage in the business world. It's quite significant. Daily trading in the US. This is the next example of, in terms of the stock market, stock exchange, that's all driven by technology. If we think about companies such as Uber, we have a really interesting business case there from the perspective that what's happening there is that technology is actually driving this new innovation in a much different way than would possible, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Because now all you need to do is take out your phone, put in where you want to go, and technology will find this random person that you never met before, and they will come around and they will pick you up. You will get into their car, they will drive you to whatever location you want, and then you will get out of their car. And you don't have to say a word to them. And that's all because of technology. Our next interesting case is anyone familiar with this ransomware attack on this health provider in the US? Yeah, some people know. So obviously what happened here is that this hospital, it got affected by ransomware. And as we all would know, ransomware basically locks up your computer, and unless you pay some money to this person online, basically your files are completely locked. They're not accessible anymore. And what's interesting here is that this hospital, they were affected by ransomware, and they were not allowed to access their files. Which, if you think about it, for a hospital, that's a big problem. You can't have you can't have patients coming in for potentially a surgery, and you're not sure exactly what to do with them. That's, I mean, there's one thing you do in healthcare, that's a big no-no. So here, what actually happened is that this hospital was infected, and in the end, what they decided to do, because they kind of did a risk assessment, basically, they said, well, actually, the lives of our customers, patients, is much more important for them than the actual amount that they would need to pay for their ransom. So they paid $17,000 US to get access to their systems back. So you have, it's an interesting kind of business decision here for them. It was really a cost benefit, and they were like, 17K versus the loss of reputation, the loss of brand, customers dying, lawsuits, all this kind of stuff. And for them, it was a decision that they made. So this is an example, and there's actually been more individuals and more actually hospitals that have been affected, and they've all decided to, in this context, pay the ransom. So cybersecurity the kind of main aim of cybersecurity then is to try to actually prevent some of these attacks and allow technologies to be used much better and much more, let's say, safely than before. That's kind of the general aim of security. So now I've kind of covered a bit of the background. I want to move on to kind of the meat of some of the kind of main challenges that I see when it comes to online security, and some of the main problems that I think over the next few years will actually become much more significant. They already exist now. Not really, probably the first two, yes. The last one, there's bits of this, but I think it's really going to get incredible over the next few years. So let's talk a little bit on intangibility of online risks. I'll give you a second to read this clip, because, and think about it for a second. When you read it, don't just read it and think, oh, that's Batman and Robin. Read it and actually think about what's happening here. Give me a second. Everyone caught up? Yeah? So here we have Robin, who we all know Robin's a pretty intelligent guy. After all, he plays a Batman, right? So he has to be pretty intelligent. And Robin, for some reason, has a smartphone. And Robin has decided that he has a smartphone. Every night he's going to check in where he is. He's going to use Foursquare. I think it's Foursquare here. Yes, Foursquare. Apologies. Foursquare. Completely different app to Foursquare. And as it says at the top, where is an app that tells random people where you are. So he decides he's going to upload his location. So Robin is posting as Robin, uploading his location to the internet. Now for some reason, Robin doesn't get for a second that the Batcave is secret. So maybe he actually does not want to upload his location to the internet. But Robin goes ahead and does it anyway. And while this is kind of a highly contrived example, it actually works quite a bit like this now. People upload their location for sometimes no reason. Sometimes because it's what you do. So let's talk a little bit about, so here's an example I want to give you of, once again, the idea about the intangibility of online risk and how it's actually a really, really big problem for us as a society and organizations. By the way, I'm including videos, just in case you get bored of my voice. The videos you can mix it up a bit. Okay, so let's hear this. Really creepy. Pretty creepy. So, as you can see here, what's happened is that they didn't expect, sorry.
Yeah, I'm interested to know how we found out about the amount of money they
It really just comes down to what people post online.
the amount?
The amounts of what exactly? Sorry.
Like the amount of money that they were spending on.
It really comes down to what people post online.
They boasted about it on Facebook.
Exactly. Not unfortunately, they're lovely people. But I have colleagues or friends, let's say, that post when they've just purchased a really expensive car or bag or house or pair of jeans or something like this. It's people post an incredible amount online. And it goes back to kind of the point here being about this idea of intangibility of online risk, that people are just not getting that actually someone might be watching what you post, someone other than your friends. You're still slap me in complete disbelief. He's like, nah, I don't believe that, I'm not buying that. Right. I'll come on to more in a second. So this is one of the really good examples. I mean, some of the really creepy things here are, for example, that he knew one lady's bank account number. He knew one lady's, the number of sexual partners that she's had. He knew about the cost of a house that a guy was trying to sell. He knew that a lady just spent £200 on, or €200, whatever it is, on clothes over the last few days. And all this information, as you can see here, is gleaned from their online presence, what they post. And in some regard, of course, what people post about them. So, online risk is in some regards, for many people, this different thing, whereas online and offline are two different kind of, let's say, contexts or environments, and they don't sometimes match. Another example of that is that, has anyone heard of the Strava incident? That's what it's called, Strava incident. So for the people that have not heard, the idea here is that Strava is a fitness kind of app company, and they allow you to kind of do lots of interesting analytics based on, let's say, smart watches and different things that you might have and what you might use. Now, I think every year, or some, I can't remember what the period is, they release a heat map. So basically kind of highlighting where individuals have gone the most across the entire world over that year, because many individuals travel or jog or skate or cycle or whatever, they have GPS turned on. So what happened in this incident was that Strava posted their map online, which allows anyone could go and access it. And what someone was able to do was to find the location of a number of secret bases, secret military installations. And that was simply because the people that were on the base were using Strava and they had the GPS turned on. So Strava basically used all this information, probably not focusing, because they're just gathering, they're not differentiating what's military, what's from the military and what's not. They're just gathering general, aggregating information. And what someone was actually able to do was kind of trace this, which is basically, I think what people are hypothesizing is basically the jogging route for some members of some military. I can't remember what it is in particular. It's here at the bottom. And basically to identify what was supposed to be a secret military base. So here once again is some idea of people's offline actions, online actions in terms of uploading GPS information constantly, even when they're in a secret base. They're not translating that to some offline risk. But here, as you can see, there's a very, very, very clear offline risk. And something I just wanted to mention is that on the back of that, we've actually done some research, probably I think 2015, highlighting that there's so many different risks to the use of smart devices, especially personal smart devices, so smart watches, like say Strava in terms of Fitbit, GPS, which organizations need to think a bit better about these days, because there's a lot of risk to organizations as individuals bring more and more personal devices into organizations. But we'll come on to a bit of that later on. Sometimes, of course, I'm coming from academia, people think I'm lying, like this guy thought I was completely making things up. Here are some real life clips to prove that this kind of stuff happens. So here, for example, what this article from Telegraph was saying is that most burglars are actually using Facebook and Twitter to target individuals. So they're going online and they're actually seeing who's posting that they're not at home, who's posting that they're about to go to a show. Here's another one. Police warn criminals who search for house parties and to crash. Another one. So this is an article. This is interesting from the perspective of LinkedIn. So who here is on LinkedIn? So most individuals. Good. So this is interesting from the perspective that that's really good. Getting bad actually. I'll tell you in a second. No, LinkedIn is good. I actually like LinkedIn. I don't have any shares in it or anything like that. This is not a sales pitch. But the challenge is that, think about it like this. Assume for a second that you are an attacker, right? Assume that you're a criminal. None of you are criminals, but assume that you're criminals. Now let's say you wanted to find out what Organization X, let's say you want to find out what actual software or hardware Organization X is running on their systems, right? So one thing you can do is to go and knock on the door and go in and walk in and try to find out, but that's not really going to happen, right? So why not potentially go on LinkedIn, look for all the employees of Organization X, look for the people that work in IT, and look at what skills they're currently saying that they have, or what technologies they currently say they're working on. And that's exactly what attackers are doing. Instead of targeting the organization directly, they're targeting and basically conducting reconnaissance on individuals that work in key roles in the organization. Because then you can actually try to find out by proxy what software is being used, what technologies are being used, if this specific person just got a new certificate in some, let's say some particular form of technology or some particular software, then immediately you almost can guess, well actually if they're doing that, it's almost certain that that's the technology that's actually being used in the organization. And that's why in some regards LinkedIn is, as is kind of described here, the hacker's ultimate reconnaissance tool. Another thing here being, and one thing I would suggest to you, never ever add people that you don't know on LinkedIn. I get so many requests from people that I have never met. Never met. And they want to be my contact. And I know many people that will add them, because they're like, oh, what's the risk? It's actually better to have, I think you held LinkedIn as, if you have 500 contacts, you just have 500 plus. That's a batch, that's a start, but you always have to think of what's the trade-off. And if someone's your contact, maybe they can just see that extra information on you that actually puts you more at risk or puts your organization more at risk. There's also been examples, especially on the kind of, let's say, corporate level. So this is also things that you could also consider. Fake LinkedIn profiles. There's been a lot of news stories around this. Basically, fake LinkedIn profiles being created, especially for the purposes of reconnaissance. And I want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing to try to understand that problem and kind of delve into a bit more detail and what's the attack there, what's the problem. So what we've been trying to do is to kind of develop a model of framework in which you can actually say, from an online perspective, if you have this information, if someone gets this information on you, then they potentially can actually get this further information on you. And I'll show you an example of that now. So let's say your name is John K. Smith. Now, people might be able to guess if that's your name. Maybe your username is J.K. Smith, or maybe your LinkedIn profile, they can probably get to that by doing a simple search based on your name. And the idea here is that you can use what we have created, this kind of model, this inference model, to be able to better understand what someone might be able to infer if they have a bit of information. So this is not necessarily kind of a complete jump, because most people actually pick usernames based on some parameterization of their actual name, because it's just easier. But let's say actually if you get to someone's username, or potential username, maybe you can get to someone's Twitter profile. maybe you can get to someone's Facebook profile. If we kind of focus, let's say, on the top only, if you get to someone's Twitter profile, then maybe you can make another inference, and maybe you can actually, if you get their Twitter profile, then maybe you can actually start to find out where they are. Because the whole idea of Twitter, unlike Facebook, Twitter is, and kind of has always been marketed as a, what are you doing right now? Or where are you right now? That's what Twitter usually has been marketed as. So you might actually post something like, okay, out with the guys. Or let's say you have a Facebook profile. On Facebook, then you have information about, let's say, where you live, who your family members are, what's your date of birth. This is typical information that's shared on Facebook. And it might not be shared publicly, but if someone is able to, let's say, become your friend or become a friend of a friend, there's also information there about what actually can be exposed. If we jump down here for a second, and let's say if someone gets to your LinkedIn profile, then all of a sudden they know where you work. If they know where you work, they maybe know where you are in office hours. If they know maybe what you've studied, and they can also explore what you studied before, but another thing is if you know where someone works. So, for example, myself, I work at University of Oxford. My name is Jason Nurse. There's a very, very clear format of how email addresses in Oxford work. And from that, you can actually guess my email address, simply by knowing where I work and what my name is, which are actually two things that are available quite easily online. And a number of companies actually work exactly like that. But let's actually take that forward a second. If you can infer where someone is, then you can actually get, of course, their specific location. And if we start to kind of drill them and try to look at risk, which is what the purpose of this model is, it's kind of an inference model to allow you to identify risk to individuals, or allow individuals to identify risk to themselves much better. So here you can actually identify potential risks of stalking if someone knows where you live. The next risk here is kind of password recovery, because individuals tend to choose passwords based on sometimes family members, sometimes date of birth. It still is actually quite common. It was common many years ago, but it still actually is quite common now. Then this idea of kind of stalking, of course, if someone knows where you work. But if we kind of jump ahead, especially to this idea of spear phishing, if someone knows your email address at work, and maybe they know about another bit of information, then what the problem is that they can start to combine different bits of information to make a spear phishing message much more believable. And that's one of the key things when it comes to spear phishing. Here you can have information being paired up. If someone knows you're not at home, and someone knows where you live, then the immediate, of course, risk that is being posed there is the kind of source of home burglary. And that, generally speaking, is a little bit of an overview of why, certain when it comes to online risks, why online risks are quite intangible these days, and why, in some regards, I can't really see it getting any better for now. Simply because there's this kind of push, there's this kind of innate push in kind of many individuals to share more. And in some regards, there are kind of a number of platforms, the way how they work, it's really about sharing more. It's not about sharing less. So, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about GDPR, because everyone here knows all about GDPR, and how that's going to change the world. Hey, that's not said sarcastically, don't laugh. But I'm really interested to see how things progress with GDPR on the 20... yeah, just checking that you actually know. Good, on the 25th of May. So now I've talked a little bit about intangibility of online risk, and one of them going to talk about social engineering. Everyone knows what social engineering is? Okay, good. So, as you can see from here, and as you kind of know, it's kind of all about manipulation of individuals into getting them to do something that maybe they shouldn't be doing. It's about sharing data or giving access or something like that, but it's all about kind of this manipulation or tricking of individuals. The real problem of social engineering and kind of instances of social engineering like phishing is that it has been for a quite long time, and it has continued to be the most significant form of attack in terms of likelihood of success. Because if you can craft a phishing message or even a voice, let's say a voice call or something like that, in a convincing fashion, chances are you might get the individual you're looking for, especially if we try to do interesting things, or someone tries to do interesting things like combining information someone has found about you online, and then using that as a platform for, or using that as input, using that reconnaissance as input for a spear phishing message. So here are some statistics that basically highlight how big the problem is in terms of social engineering generally and phishing. But once again, just to ensure you don't fall asleep, I want to show you a really interesting video that talks a bit about, it gives you a kind of a perfect example of a social engineering attack conducted live. Not live, but live. I hear you just laughing. Basically you're saying, oh, glad that wasn't me. So impressive, not impressive? Yeah. Impressive, extremely impressive. They of course cut it up a bit, but roughly in under 2 minutes. But the question I have for you is, what factors, or we're human for now, but let's focus on from an individual perspective. If you were the person on the other line, so you were the person at the help desk, what factors would make you kind of more compelled to believe this individual and to help them out?
Feel sorry for
You feel sorry for them?
It's very convincing.
Very convincing. Anything else?
I'm tired of the job anyway, so.
You're tired of the job anyway. You know what? That's probably so true. So, I mean, some of the key things here are things like baby crying. So it touches on what you were saying. Baby crying. Imagine if someone calls you up, the baby's on the next line, and they're trying to get something done. I don't care who you are, how bad a human you are. You're going to be thinking, oh, I feel for this person. There's a bit of compassion there. There's a bit of, oh, I should really help her out. She sounds like she's having a hard time. The baby's clearly making lots of noise. So immediately kind of compassion. And then another thing you could think about is the fact that it's a help desk. So help desk is supposed to do one thing. If nothing else, one thing the help desk has. You don't have to do finance, you don't have to do accounting, they have to do one thing. Help. So what's interesting here is that you can have a very targeted message at a help desk, someone that's supposed to help. Then you have the panic of the crying baby, which is hilarious, given that it is a YouTube video. And then you also have just the, oh, what, my husband didn't add me? Oh, we got married, we were newlyweds, we got married last month, he was supposed to add me, oh, he didn't get around to it yet. Oh, my goodness, what am I going to do? Oh, I can't receive a text message because I'm on the phone. You can, by the way. just clarify if anyone was not sure about that. All this kind of stuff was kind of putting pressure on the person on the next side to believe what was being said, to listen to what was being said, and to act on what was being said. And these are some of the kind of key ways in which attackers actually launch social engineering attacks. These are the mechanisms that they use to try to convince the person on the next line, or whether the next line be a phone, next to a phone, or on the kind of signal in front of your laptop, reading your email. All these are kind of the key things that the attacker tries to use to make you believe what they're saying. So this is another example, which is just another example, really. So it says here, dear mailbox user, new security updates need to be performed on our servers due to the rate of phishing. Do you see what? Do you see how smart that is? Well, smart, not sure smart, but let's see how conniving, let's say, it is. Please click here and sign in to help sign into the IT help server for maintenance and to update your update of your mailbox. Please note that this update is compulsory to all staff and students of this institution. Compulsory. This is something you need to do. So here we have new security updates. Here we have the problem of phishing being highlighted, which is hilarious, really. And then you also have it is compulsory. If your mailbox is not updated today, your account will be inactive and you won't be able to send or receive messages. So there's kind of a lot of kind of points here. First, it's trying to get you on the back foot. Then it's trying to highlight the problem of phishing, which of course is a significant problem of phishing. Then it's trying to actually get you worried. And all it's trying to do here is actually to throw you off your thinking. What attackers tend to try to do quite a bit is to make you not think logically. They try to kind of get you into, this panic mode where logically we think of this, logically when you think about this email, I know it's phishing, but then as soon as you start throwing something that kind of throws me off and makes me think, oh, this is compulsory. Or, oh, actually, we have a really important email to send tomorrow, I can't be messing about, so I need to get this done. That's kind of all the kind of the types of factors that attackers try to use to get us to believe their messaging. So here's another one that I kind of quite dear to my heart. So this is a legitimate Facebook page, isn't it? This is not a trick question.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Hey, I'm the speaker. Yes, it is. No, it's not.
Facebook logo.
It is a Facebook logo. It is. But there's something else sneaky happening here. Yeah?
URL's not right.
URL's not right. What's going on with the URL?
Too many O's.
Too many O's, this man. It's Facebook. So, but think for a second. Put yourself in the position, let's say, put yourself in the position of, maybe let's say you are, 15 years old. You just got an email from, what do kids use these days?
WhatsApp?
No, kids don't use WhatsApp. Snapchat. That's what the kids use. No, WhatsApp. No. So let's say they just got a Snapchat message from a friend saying, "Oh, did you see the pics from last night? They're awesome. You should check Facebook." And let's say they happen to go to Facebook and actually they don't really end up on Facebook, and actually maybe they get to a page like this. But the problem is that sometimes what people tend to do is they don't think about Facebook in terms of to check that it's secure. They kind of jump ahead quite a bit and they think, actually, I want to see those images. So when they get the page like this, they scan it, looks at Facebook, username, password, enter. Because to many individuals, security is this thing that's blocking someone to take it from so someone wants to get from point A to point B. And security is the thing in the middle that's blocking them from getting to it. So you try to access and to kind of do away with security as quick as possible. And that's what would happen here. Simply because it looks like the legitimate website, the average person might not actually look to see that there's actually 3 O's. So another thing here. So this is a study we actually did where we actually showed individuals Facebook, as in this instance. And then we actually tried to monitor where individuals actually tries to focus on the web page. So we tried to generate heat maps, basically, with where individuals will focus on and why they will focus on those spots. What we found was that individuals would tend to focus on, the white spots are the places where individuals focus the most. What we found that individuals would tend to focus mainly on these spots here, so they would focus on the URL. It was also focused here, obviously. But when we asked them to kind of basically pick whether a website was phishing or not, so we showed them this and we said, is this phishing or not? And then this is what basically the heat map that tries to understand where they actually focus on the web page. And then when we actually got here, so this is the last one. So they said, when they looked at this one, they said, yep, that's a phishing website. And then we showed them one at the bottom, and we asked them whether it was phishing or not. Can you guess what most individuals said?
It wasn't.
It wasn't. Why?
It's got an SSL certificate.
SSL certificate. But is it or not?
Is an SSL certificate, but not a legit one, I'm guessing.
Exactly. Well, partly, but there's also something else going on here. Look closely. Have you seen what else is going on? It's probably not that great to see. Sorry, did you already mention the 3 O's? Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure you got that. But the key thing is here that if you think that this, so most people said this is not a phishing website. And what was really, really interesting here from our perspective was that, well, from what we can understand, individuals are now actually thinking that because they see a padlock, it means it's not phishing. And that's really, really interesting from the perspective that all the training, all the security awareness, for many, many years it has been, when you go to the website, you check it's secure, check the padlock. And that's been the training, that's been the message. But now attackers know that that's the message. So attackers have adapted. And they've said, okay, everyone's looking for the padlock. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep the padlock, but we're going to mess with the URL. Because as we see here, this is exactly what individuals did. We asked them, is this phishing or not? And most individuals said it's not phishing. And when we looked and tried to understand where they focused on the padlock. They didn't focus on the URL anymore. Because they just looked for the padlock and they said, oh, the padlock is there. It's clearly not phishing. But attackers know this and attackers are now exploiting this. So there's actually been an increase in attacks that have a padlock, but they're not a legitimate URL. And they're extremely successful. Here is, so here I wanted to kind of highlight the kind of overall point here is that attackers are basically trying to exploit our human nature. They're trying to exploit who we are as individuals and use that as the basis of an attack. And that's why attackers are extremely successful and extremely worrying. So here, for example, there's issues such as word of mouth, there's kind of spoof branding, which we talked about before. The next one here is kind of, I think spear tactics is a really interesting one, because, I mean, this was probably 10 years ago now, this image is quite old. But this is kind of a classic image on Facebook. I used to circulate Facebook, and it would say, click here to see this shocking image. And I don't know about you, but I would always want to click. It's only because I was doing a PhD in security, I thought, maybe this will look bad. If you get in trouble, maybe this will look bad. I mean, after all. But I would see that and I would want to click, because I would be like, I wonder what's so shocking. I wonder what's going to happen. Someone's going to eat into a piranha, or I don't know, what's going to happen. And also, this one is really interesting as well. This is kind of different variations of similar attacks. So this is for kind of, this one in the middle is for people that kind of go on, let's say, websites for streaming that maybe they shouldn't be going on, and watching, let's say, bootleg or so on films. And what attackers have actually done is kind of install pop-up ads in these websites, and the ad would pop up and it would say, oh, for better viewing experience, please update your movie player. And the average person would be thinking, well, I could watch this bootleg movie where it was clearly filmed at the back of the cinema, people's head is getting up and down constantly. So I could watch that, or I could upload, I could upgrade to see the premium HD experience. I can hear you thinking, yeah, come on, it's HD. And attackers know that we're thinking like that, so they're crafting attacks exactly. This is an next malware attack. And then here's one that tries to prey on individuals' fear. So once again, that highlights another area where I think once again we're going to get many more issues. Because as you can see with the attack, with the phishing attack, attackers are constantly changing. And they constantly change as security advice is being released. So for example, there's phishing, and then the security community said, hey guys, there's phishing, we need to do something about this. Okay, let's make everyone focus on the padlock. So it was like, okay, everyone, look for the padlock. Okay, attacker said, guys, everyone's looking for the padlock. No one's paying attention anymore. I know what to do. Let's have the padlock, but let's change the URL. So now they've done that. And the security community is like, shoot, guys. And it's kind of this constant kind of catch-up game. It's almost like, is it Roadrunner? Yeah, which is watching the game. It's this constant catch-up game where kind of security, the attackers are constantly trying to push the boundaries of what to do. And then as a result, we're kind of trying to catch up constantly of what to do to prevent the attackers from being successful. So with that being said, I'll move on now to talk about the Internet of what I call problematic things. So we all know what the Internet of Things is, right? People thinking, oh no, I failed. I should have added more questions. Internet of Things. Yeah, no. Yeah, okay. So whenever I ask people what Internet of Things are or is, I tend to get answers like this. I tend to get it's smart TVs, smart fridges, smart things, various different smart things. Generally speaking, if you think of it like this, kind of a network of objects or things that are connected in various different ways, that's kind of a general, speaking of reasonable definition for it. Now, when you think of IoT, I like to break it down to three main components, or three main segments. One is kind of the things environment, and that is kind of basically the smart watches we have, the smart fridges, the sensors. So here you can kind of see, roughly speaking, examples of things that might be in a thing environment, where you have, let's say, a network, you have different IoT devices on the network, and then you have different bits on the back of those devices. So for example, physical objects. And you might have many different networks, that's the whole kind of concept of the IoT. Then in the middle you have basically the cloud environment. And the cloud environment is actually what does all of the interesting processing when it comes to IoT. IoT devices these days, unfortunately, for now actually, are still a bit more on the dumb side. Even though they're called smart devices, they're probably on average quite dumb. Where all the interesting processing is done is in the cloud. So I was speaking to someone recently, and I was talking about Amazon Alexa, and I asked them, Amazon Alexa, you have one? Yeah, of course. I said, so when you tell Amazon Alexa something, like for example, if you type turn on your TV, does it just kind of send a command to your TV saying turn on your TV? And he's like, yeah. So I said, so is any data actually transmitted from your home to the cloud, for example, or off your network? I'm like, no, of course not. I mean, Amazon Alexa is right here, the TV's right next to it, so it just tells the TV, come on. And that was the explanation that was given to me. And then I had to say, actually, when you tell Amazon Alexa or Google Home or Siri or whatever you use to do X. But especially let's focus on Amazon Alexa for now. The way how it works is it takes that command, and basically that will be the environment, and it encrypts that command in some ways, and it transfers that command to the cloud. The cloud takes that command, determines what you actually said, and basically determines what response is necessary. It converts that to a command, and then it sends that command back to your home network, and then that command is actioned on in your home network, and then it's told to turn on the TV. And it's really interesting talking to people sometimes that don't know that much about technology, in that they kind of, surely that's not possible, because that's happened so quickly. But you know what, technology these days is that quick. I mean, seriously, that was the response I got. It was a bit like, no, come on, that was like a second. There's no way that all that can happen in a second. Actually, it's very possible. And that's because, especially these days, the cloud environment is just so quick. There's so many servers that kind of receive data, crunch numbers, and pass it back to the thing environment. And then, of course, you have these days kind of a countless amount of applications. There's just so many ways in which IoT can be applied. It's incredible. From manufacturing to smart homes to smart offices, even kind of very, very simple things such as sensors in these buildings. So there's a number of different issues in terms of the use of IoT. One is kind of this one in terms of corporate problems, and the next one is sort of private issues. So focus on corporate problems first. So some of the research that we've been doing is trying to understand this issue of risk assessment. So risk assessment is something that traditionally has been done, especially let's say security risk assessment has been done in companies for eons. One of the challenges with risk assessment, however, is that it tends to be very periodic. Risk assessment is this thing that you do maybe once every year, or once every 6 months, or when there's some significant change in a system. The problem with the IoT, or the problem that the IoT brings, rather, is that systems will change extremely quickly. Systems will no longer be, okay, my network has 3 laptops and 2 desktops, and that's and a router, and a printer. That's my network. It won't be like that anymore. It'll be like that, and there might be someone that comes in that adds their Bluetooth, whatever, their Bluetooth speakers or headset. They might have a smart box that they decide to connect to the corporate Wi-Fi. They might have some other device that is connected to the corporate Wi-Fi. And all of a sudden, there's so many devices on the network, it's actually incredible. So one of the issues here is that networks are constantly changing simply because of IoT. And also, there's this issue to unfortunately consider kind of failure due to assets as an attack platform. So anyone familiar with kind of the DIN cyber attack? Which is basically where all of these IoT devices, I think it was hundreds of thousands or something like that, IoT devices across the world, were used as part of a botnet to actually take down big services like, I think they took on Amazon for a little while, I think they took on Reddit for a little while. I'm not sure about Google, but they took on some pretty big players like offline. In other words, their sites were inaccessible for a little while. And that was mainly using a bunch of unsecure Internet of Things devices, so like smart webcams, smart fridges, all this kind of stuff across the world that were used as part of a massive botnet. So, excuse me. I want to show you some kind of specific attacks that IoT devices actually have been allowing or can't allow. One is this whole idea of kind of stealing passwords. So there's been people familiar with Black Hat and DEF CON in several places. So Black Hat and DEF CON is kind of 2 of the big hacking conferences kind of in the world really. They happen in Las Vegas every year. So in what they did in this kind of attack is they showed Google Glass. So Google Glass basically being the smart glass that actually can record. And they showed the ability of a Google Glass to actually record and potentially steal someone's password. And the idea here is that let's say you were there from me. If you write your password on your phone or a tablet or something like that, maybe I'm a bit too far to see it. Because maybe especially the angle is kind of quite difficult for me to see it. What they actually showed with this attack is that if I have a smart glasses, I can actually start to record. I can record exactly how you type. And these guys show that they have software that's actually able to take that recording and from that decipher what your PIN is. So it's pretty kind of, in some regards, cutting edge, in some regards, quite freaky stuff. The next attack is this one here with respect to kind of secret recording. So imagine, for example, I'm not suggesting anyone do this, by the way. Let's say you wanted a raise, right? You wanted a raise. You know, I've been working for a long period of time. You said you want a raise. Let's say you got your boss, maybe in the corner by the water coolers, where these things tend to happen, and you kind of lower your boss, you kind of entrap your boss in some regards, and talk about your boss's boss. You say, oh yeah, it's horrible, horrible guys, yeah, horrible guy, he hates really, or hate him or her or whatever. And you get your boss to rant maybe for like 5 minutes about how bad the boss is and how crap the company is and all this kind of stuff, right? And let's say you're wearing a smartwatch. And let's say you're recording that entire 5 minutes of conversation. Now let's say you go home and you write your boss an email and you say, I want a raise. And your boss replies and says, oh, are you crazy? Why you just email with a blue saying that you want a raise? And then you email them a copy of the conversation that you recorded. All of a sudden now your boss is thinking twice about that raise. And what we have here actually is because these type of attacks are becoming increasingly likely, especially because these devices are so inconspicuous. So here is an example. This is called the mild tap, and it's a very small, probably that, I think about that big, and it's a recorder. And basically how it works is it's very small. You clip it on. No one will kind of recognize you're wearing it. You tap it twice to start recording, and you tap it twice to stop recording. And it's marketed as kind of an app that lets, or a device that lets you remind, so you can remind yourself what things you need to do throughout the day. Personal assistant, let's say almost. This is an example of a Wi-Fi pen. For this device, when you actually write, the point is that when you write, it actually records automatically. So you might be in a meeting writing, someone might think you might be not recording, maybe you might be. And then of course, when it comes to smartwatches actually are able to do this quite easily. So the idea here is that there's kind of a number of different attacks that someone might be able to launch against you, or even think for a second that, let's say someone has a smartwatch in your organization or an organization, and let's say an attacker manages to compromise that smartwatch and continuously listen in on whatever is said. Once again, another form of attack, which is not possible because of smart devices. This I want to show briefly. So this is a video that kind of gives you an idea. So I have to exit temporarily. So this is the video that I would have mentioned before about the smart glasses. I want to give you an idea about how it actually works. But that gives an idea of some of the attacks that are now possible, especially from a corporate perspective. So now I'll talk very briefly about the personal perspective and then I'll kind of wrap up. Can your smart home be used against you in court? That's a question from me to you.
Yes, because they recorded mother and son.
Yes, because they record. Anyone agree or disagree? Yeah.
Surely it can't be legal.
They can't. You said cannot or can?
Not.
Okay? Because
Well,
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to understand your perspective.
They would need like a warrant, right?
Yes, depending on what country. Yes, yes. So the answer to this actually is kind of yes. And it kind of touches on your point. So there's been a famous, I don't say, not necessarily famous, but an interesting case in the US where there's been this question about can your smart home be used against them. And essentially what happened is in this person's home, there was an attack and someone was basically murdered. And the police came in and the police were kind of, of course doing what police do. And I think they recognized that there was an Alexa in the home. So I think what happened basically is that they were trying to get access to recordings from that Alexa to of course find out and to establish exactly what happened. I think they went to Amazon and I believe Amazon said no, we're not giving you access to that information. So it's just kind of touching on what you would have said. Amazon was very strong that they were not giving this information. Eventually what happened is the owner of the home actually gave access to it. I'm not sure if actually anything happened or if they found anything interesting. But the point here being, apparently it can. So, I mean, even if, potentially, maybe if there was a warrant or something like that, if police had a good cause that something actually happened here, and maybe Amazon or Google or Siri, whoever it is, had enough information, maybe they might actually be able to find out whether something was recorded to maybe point the owner of the Alexa as a criminal or not. So the answer here really is yes. Depending on what you use it for, it can be used against you. Here is kind of more information about that case. So police see Amazon Echo data in murder case. Amazon Echo record is demanded by police. So this is in the US. Once again, it was demanded because this is interesting as well because there's a bit of parallel when it comes to the iPhone Apple situation when it comes to Apple and the biometrics at Apple and law enforcement demanding access to criminals' phones, for example. And then here you have kind of Amazon's virtual assistant might have been used to witness a murder, and Amazon eventually hand over recordings, and that was really on the back of the individual actually giving consent for this. This is, I think, one of the best cases. People, some people are laughing, some people know this. It's kind of always really good when people kind of know where I'm going with these types of things. For those of you that don't know, there was this kind of lovely case in America where this little girl, this mother encouraged her daughter, I think encouraged, but anyway, her mother allowed her daughter to talk to and engage with Alexa. I mean, why not? Alexa's quite nice, I suppose. And what, I think when the mother was out of the room, the daughter was talking to Alexa, and the daughter said to Alexa, "Oh, Alexa, I would really like a dollhouse to play with. I mean, really like a dollhouse. And also, really like some cookies. I know what Alexa did. Alexa processed that order. And the next day, the mom got a knock on the door. The mom got a knock on the door, mom opened the door and said, "Okay, sorry, what's this?" And Amazon said, "Oh, we have your packages." Mom said, "I didn't order any packages. What are you talking about?" Eventually, mom recognized and traced back, and what happened is that the little girl, through interacting with Alexa, actually ordered these packages. So here's a picture of the dollhouse that was ordered. Here's a picture of the box of cookies. I think it's really, really, another thing that I'm not sure how true this is, some people that were commenting on this article made the point that in this instance, it was the most expensive dollhouse that was ordered. I'm not sure how that, but anyway, we'll go into that. So this is interesting, but I think what's even more interesting here is that kind of you have this idea where individuals are interacting with these devices. Now on the back of that, let's jump ahead a bit. So TV got news of this story, some TV recorded this, and they just saw, this is amazing, this is incredible. And you know what they did? They aired the exact same comment that the little girl said, live. Everyone can guess where this is going, right? And basically what happened is that hundreds or something like that, well, several people complained that Amazon, I can't remember what the number was, but loads of people, their Alexa heard the recording and ordered the same dollhouse. And I think that's interesting from the perspective that, so if we think, so this is quite benign, right? But what if an attacker had to craft a message that was targeted at your phone without you even paying attention? Can be pretty creepy. There's also been attacks actually in kind of cutting edge attacks in the security field. There's an attack, if you want to look it up, it's called the Dolphin attack. And what it does is it targets many of these Amazon Alexa, Google Home, and so on with a certain frequency that individuals can't hear, but that the device picks up. And they're actually able to, I think they're able to basically command the device to do things on the back of these frequencies that we can't hear. Hence the idea of Dolphin attack. And that's really, really creepy. But that's where we are, because these attacks can actually do this. And the last thing I want to show you is this clip. And when you watch this, I want you to think about the fact that whether you like it or not, in 5, maybe 10 years, just like you won't be able to buy a smart TV, maybe in 5, you won't be able to buy anything that isn't a smart TV in 5 years. In maybe 10, 15 years or so, this might be your home, especially if you're really rich. This might well be your home. So think about actually the risk, and you'll see the risk being exploited here on the back of this being your home. Yes? Who in here thinks that in 10 years you can buy something that's not a smart TV?
I don't buy a TV anyway.
Under the assumption that you would buy a TV. Maybe you'll be able to turn it off. I mean, touching on exactly that point, what's really interesting here is that, they tell her, can you turn it off? And they were like, how do I turn it off? Everything is in the walls. When they bought the smart home package, it came fully loaded basically. Everything is in.
You buy something old on eBay, yes?
Probably. Actually, probably that's the only place. I think this is really interesting because it really highlights when we eventually go ahead with kind of fully fledged smart homes, everything being automated. I'm not sure, to be honest, it's a good thing in the context of the shower temperature. Everything else is quite believable, but the shower temperature, I'm not sure at what point you would actually connect that to the internet. But So far we've actually seen a number of different, if it can be done, it will be done. It's not about whether it's a good idea to do it. It's about it will be done. But I think this is really interesting, this is a really powerful example because it highlights what kind of the extent to which IoT can exist in the context of a smart home, but also on the flip side, all the stuff that can go wrong. In that, if there's one place you expect to feel safe and secure, it's your home. But what if attackers kind of make it possible such that even in your home, you don't feel safe and secure? So that's, sorry, I'll just put this in the last slide. So that's basically my talk. Thank you very much for listening, of being awake and attentive, especially being awake. And I think now we can take questions. Yes, now we can take questions. Sorry, so you wanted
there's
to...
only simply that in the home you're always going to have to, and other places, you're going to have to have a man override. Even if it's a return power off, so you wouldn't have.
You would have to have a kill
just
switch in
there.
some regard.
Yeah, you wouldn't have everything in the walls buried away.
Yeah, I would really hope so. I really, really hope that will be the case. Such that it never reaches this extent where everything is, you basically don't have this kill switch, you don't have this option of turning things off. But whether that will be actually the case, I don't know.
There are a couple of vulnerabilities I've become aware of.
Yeah.
I'm getting a new car in a few months.
Would you? And it's a new car as well? It's a new car.
It's a new car, yes. It's keyless. And I saw Panorama the other night.
Yeah.
And these thieves are able to get these devices.
The repeaters.
That can read the signal from
Yep.
the phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all a bit.
Indeed, there's that, and I've also seen attacks where I've seen basically read about attacks where, so basically it's keyless. So and the way how it works is your car knows when you're close by because you have a key or a fob, whatever you want to call it, and it knows you're close by because it's in your pocket and it unlocks because it knows you're there, unlock. What I've seen attackers doing is that, let's say that, so you park here, let's say that your house is over there, and probably your key is somewhere in your house, obviously. What I've seen kind of attackers trying to do now is they buy something, basically a repeater, specifically for that signal, and they place it halfway in between. And what that does is, it basically takes the signal being transmitted from your key and repeats it, this just like how normal AAP would work, basically. And repeats it to the car. So all of a sudden now the car gets unlocked, because the car thinks the key is close by. Seriously, attackers, it's incredible the different types of, they are in many ways just as, in some ways actually more innovative when it comes to how we break the system.
Aren't car manufacturers going to do something about this?
I'm sure they will, but like I was mentioning before, it's kind of really a catch-up game sometimes. It is, because car manufacturers, and basically any manufacturer, sometimes it's really kind of a race to the market. Sometimes. It's really about, okay, how can we push the boundary before our competitor can push the boundary? How can we get to the market faster? Some individuals or some companies will focus on how do we get to market faster, but also considering things like privacy and security. Others will just be like, no, how do we get to market faster, full stop. If someone cares about privacy, maybe we might think about that afterwards.
There's an incident.
If there's an incident or something like that. So I mean, one really interesting case with, once again, thinking about kind of smart devices is, anyone familiar with Cloud Pets? The Cloud Pets breach. Cloud Pets, no? So Cloud Pets is this company that manufactures smart toys. I'm not sure if they're still in business, but they manufacture smart toys. And they had a data breach maybe a year or a bit ago. And basically what happened was that these smart toys, especially smart toys they would allow you to record a voice message or something like that, or parents, let's say, could record a voice message into this little teddy bear or something. And they give it to their kid, and the kid could play back the voice message and hear their mom or dad when they're not around. And vice versa, the kid can record messages and so on and so forth. Now the problem being that these messages were stored, of course, in the cloud. Like I said, these devices, they pretend to be smart, but they're really not. These recordings were stored in the cloud, along with email addresses and all types of other stuff. And Cloud Pets was breached. So then the problem was that you had, I think it was millions or hundreds of thousands of voice messages of kids all of a sudden online. It is even to the extent that I believe it is, I'm not 100% sure, but it might be, I think it was Germany. Germany has no banned, I think, the sold of some particular smart toys, simply because it raises a risk to some of the most vulnerable parts of the population possible, kids. And that kind of touches on your part where sometimes people care about these things, and it really depends, because really it's a catch-up game. Companies, of course, are trying, But then the challenge is that attackers are trying sometimes actually quite much harder. And attackers have more time because they're just sitting thinking, okay, I bought the system, now how can I think about breaking it?
How do you see the role of government and regulation in all of this?
I think one main thing I would mention there is, I think regulation and government, regulation in particular, can do a bit more, and that can actually push the boundary, which is why things like GDPR I think really, really interesting. And also in the, I would say interesting, it's really interesting. However you want to interpret that's completely up to you. But one thing that I would like to emphasize on the back of that is there's a push, especially in the UK now, with something called Secure by Design. And I think that's really, really, really important, because what you have in the past is that you have devices being given to, or let's say individuals buying devices, so members of the public buying devices. And unfortunately then they have this problem of, okay, they buy a device, but then they're responsible for ensuring that it's secure, or that it's set up so that it maintains privacy. And what the Secure by Design push is all about is by ensuring that by design, by default, these devices come with certain level of security or privacy set up in them. I think that's actually a really important area where regulation and government can play a big part by pushing more this idea of secure and private by design. I think that, if you get that, because then you push back the, let's say, the priority or the management of kind of those type of issues on companies like manufacturers and on kind of service providers and platforms. And that's where they can actually probably do something about it. The challenge is always that if you give an individual and you tell them, okay, you can buy this secure device for £60. Let's say a smartwatch. Let's say you can buy this secure, respectable, high quality smartwatch for £250. Or you can buy this other smartwatch that kind of looks like it, kind of does maybe 3/4 of what it does, brand that you never heard about in your life before, but it kind of can do it for $49.99. What do you think the average person is going to do? Let's say it looks exactly like it. What's the average person going to do? They're going to go for $9.99. Because the average person is thinking, well, I have this amount of money. This one kind of looks like that one. Why not? The only situation where I've seen this kind of difference in thinking is, well, where people are bought into a specific type of product or brand. So there's some people, for example, that only buy a certain brand, and whatever happens, that's the brand they're buying. A good example of this is kind of people that focus on Apple products. And that's really interesting because they're like, well, this is my product, this is my ecosystem, I go with this. And Apple is very interesting from the perspective that Apple products is always a bit higher, a bit more expensive. So then you have this interesting thing where for them, for the individuals, the purchase of these products is not about the money, it's about getting this brand. And most companies don't actually have that. Apple is probably, I'm not 100% sure, but I think for quite a while Apple has been the most, I'm not sure if it's not profitable. I think it's in terms of their brand. Their brand is one of the most, or the most respected around the, it's not respected, brand value or something, I can't remember what the exact term is. But that's why Apple does so good when it comes to branding. Yeah.
Well, this watch is $6.99 and it tells the time. You've been a bit short on solutions.
No,
I'm planning myself to be an analog monk in a Faraday cage.
Do you mean me personally in terms of solutions, or my talk, or what do you mean exactly?
How are you going to survive this?
Well, my job is to help highlight the problems and to try to solve them. But
you've outlined a dystopia. Do you see yourself in a dystopia doing anything?
Yes, I do. So the point of actually my talk tonight was really, and hence the title, was to kind of highlight some of the real issues. To highlight some of the issues, because I think there's kind of a massive piece around awareness of these type of issues. And of course, on the back of that, what my job is to do is to help tackle some of these issues. So let's say in terms of the online, this kind of intangibility of online risk. One area where we're actually trying to tackle that issue is to try to create this model that I highlighted, this kind of tool, basically a tool set on the back of that model that tries to say, actually, if you share this online, then that could expose you to this risk. and to provide that in the hand of individuals so that they will be able to better understand, if I share this information online, then that exposes me in this way. So that's one kind of type of solution that I'm trying to gear towards. In terms of the Internet of Things, there's also been research. So currently my research always tries to focus on what type of adaptations and current risk assessment methods are necessary that they can actually be tailored for IoT systems. But that's a massive problem because IoT systems are so dynamic and risk assessment traditionally has been so static. You have this massive gap in the middle. So what we're trying to do is better understand, okay, what adaptations, what enhancements can be made to existing risk assessment methods, so picking let's say a few, and trying to understand how do these map on, how can we expand, how can we extend these to actually be able to tackle IoT risk. And the third one, which I can't remember, someone remind me? Someone was paying attention? No one? Breathing well tonight, haven't I? We're going to turn to the sandwiches. Pardon? Social engineering, thank you. I think social engineering is really, really, really big issue, and I think the one main things we can do there is once again educating people and trying to kind of cut out the ability of them being attacked. So I do also some work in trying to help individuals understand what factors attackers use to exploit them, and that's what we're trying to hint at tonight as well. In that attackers try to get you not to think logically. So if you read an email, a message, someone calls you up saying this, the first thing they're going to try to do is to kind of they're going to try to do two things: knock you off your logical thinking, as you would have seen in one of the examples, in the email example, or get you on their side. Because if they can get you in any two of those kind of ends, then if you're over here, then you're probably more likely to believe what they say. If they knock you off your balance in terms of logical thinking, then you're already thinking a bit irrationally and you're more vulnerable to suggestion. So the aim of my talk in that regard is more to get you to recognize, hey, look out for these things. Look out for these tricks, because these are the tricks that attackers are trying to use to fool us all. I get the same phishing emails, and I get a variety of different types of phishing emails, different variations of phishing emails. I've never received any social engineering calls. I usually get the PBI calls everyone else gets. But there's just so many different ways. I mean, even in terms of, has everyone ever heard of whaling? So you know what phishing is, yeah? How many people know what whaling is? So whaling is where basically attackers go after big fish. Hence whaling. Come on guys, that's pretty bad of you. Very serious. And really the aim is to go after people like CEOs, or go after CFOs, or to go after CEOs' PA. Yep. Because when you think about it, so one of the examples I saw quite a while ago actually now is that instead of going after the CEO or the CFO, you call up the CEO, or you email you call up the CEO's PA, for example, and you say, you pretend to maybe be the CFO. And you say, I'm in this meeting, I'm about to go into to present to the clients, I need this information pronto. And then he says, but how John or Mary, how do you know this is you? What do you mean? What do you mean? I need this information now, I'm about to go into a meeting with the clients. If I don't have this meeting, the company could lose millions. Shoot, millions. What email address should I use? Oh, tell me this email address. Literally, that simple. And there's some attackers that do that. I'll go here and then I'll come back. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to comment. You know the video you have?
Yeah, well, which video?
Well, one with the lady who phoned up and she put the baby noise on
Yeah.
there. Well, I saw a reality program and it was about how they were trying to get people to say what they knew on Marine. So they're training people to be a Marine.
Yeah.
And so they put baby noise in the background to see how long they'd last.
Yeah.
And they gave up very quickly because it's just a really, I think, extortionate noise that people dislike and it upsets them.
Yeah.
And it made them talk.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing in that, so you're exactly. That we know that when we hear baby crying, there's something wrong, there's something happening. And if any of us have had kids, we know that point of when the baby is crying and something's not going wrong or we need to help it. So the average person knows, I need to help. And attackers know all of these tricks. And they continuously, as you would have seen in the examples, they're continuously updating. As soon as security catches up, then they try and do different things. So if security catches up, and they try and do different things. Yeah?
So I think a large proportion of these problems are actually identity problems. Either a human trying to identify a system that they're talking to, or the system trying to identify the human.
Yes.
And if you imagine a world where we could really positively identify in both of those scenarios, then a lot of these vulnerabilities would be wiped out. So how much of your research is into things like decentralized identity and that type of work?
I don't focus a bit on that because while you're right, I guess in many regards, that if we can kind of be sure what people's identity, either the attacker or either the legitimate organization's identity or the legitimate individual's identity, I think in some regards, especially when it comes to social engineering and actually bringing someone up, I think then the attack becomes a little more difficult. I think when it comes to some levels of online identification, it's possible to solve that problem, but I think there's always the kinks, and I think one of the key things that comes to my mind is that attackers will always be trying to find ways to break such systems. Whether it's fully possible, I don't know, to be honest. I some regards do believe that security people will be in jobs for quite a long time. Simply because the world is crazy. I was speaking to someone this morning, and the key parallel that came with that conversation was what happens in the situation when there's, firstly, let's say, complete driverless cars, and then secondly, what happens even in a situation where half the cars are driverless and half aren't. But anyway, I'm running over. One more question?
One more question.
Yeah, sorry.
Just one comment, really,
yes, of course.
on the social engineering side of things. One of the things that we were told, I guess historically, was if you've got links in emails to hover over them and see where they go.
Yeah.
But there's more and more these days are the compressed email addresses, so you don't know where they go until you click on them.
And yes, I think, sorry, your question about
no, that was just a comment.
Yes, really. I mean, that's one of the things that annoys me the most when it comes to URL shorteners.
Yeah.
Which basically those.
Yeah.
And I never try to click on them. But it's funny because on some platforms, so I think on Twitter, for example, Twitter kind of shortens most of them to t.co or something like that. So it does wonder me every now and then if someone actually tries to somehow spoof that image or spoof that that URL. Just like in some examples, what some attackers have tried to do or have actually successfully done in the URL bar is that they've used characters from a different language. Something that looks like an O to you as a quick glance actually isn't really an O. And that sends you to a completely different URL. It's pretty crazy, right? I have a job for a very long period of time. I know you guys, I have a job for a very long period of time.
That was fabulous, Jason.
Thank you very much for coming around.